All right, perfect. Um, could you just reaffirm that you can see my screen by raising your hand using the GoToWebinar interface? Uh, you could just raise your hand and let me know that you can see my screen. That would be great. There should be a slide appearing here that says Google Apps for Business in a cloud with some icons in it. And then you should also see the text GA110 Gmail and Calendar messaging in parentheses after that. So let me check. It looks like perfect. Okay, excellent. Well, my name is Dave Genzen. I am a trainer with a company called Onyx Networking, and we're providing assistance to North Andover in the transition to Google Apps. So today's course covers the messaging suite of apps, which we uh, categorize as being Gmail, Calendar, Contacts, and Hangouts or chat. So to get started, I am going to close this slide and this guy, and we'll take you into the Gmail interface. Okay, when you log into Gmail for the first time, this is what you're going to see. You won't see a lot of messages yet in your inbox, but you will. This is the layout that you'll be seeing when you first access your account. Let's start with a few logistics, though. To begin with, I wanted you to know that I'm going to use a few terms interchangeably. Um, Hangouts and chat are two of those terms. Hangouts is the name that Google uses to refer to a few different functions. One of those is instant messaging or chat. Another is video conferencing. And the third is phone calls. So those are all under the penumbra of Hangouts. But I will refer to Hangouts as being chat, and I'm sure I'll refer to chat as being Hangouts. Just know that I'm talking about the same thing. The other terms that I'll use interchangeably will be apps, programs, and software. All of those are the same thing. Generally speaking, we refer to them as being apps. And people tend to think about apps now as being programs that are accessible either by a mobile device or by a web interface. But still others refer to apps as being just programs. So when I refer to those, you'll know I'm talking about the same things there. The other thing that I'll note here as we begin is that I'll probably be fiddling around a bit on this side of the screen, over here on the right side, and that's me using the control panel for the GoToWebinar interface. Um, if I reopen it or something, you'll kind of see me moving around here, and that's just to field questions. If you do have any questions that come up during the session, those can be typed into the GoToWebinar control panel on your end, and they'll come through as texts to me. And then I'll answer those usually every 15 minutes or so. I'll stop to check and see if there have been any questions, and then I'll answer those at that time. And then I'll try and leave some time at the end to kind of sweep up and see if there have been any additional questions that have come up. At the very end, Chris is going to take over and provide some more training applicable to your environment, and that'll be in the last half hour of the class. Okay, so to begin with, let me first start by saying that I'm using a Chrome web browser as part of this training. Chrome is not required to use Google Apps. If you're using Internet Explorer or Firefox or Safari, any modern major web browser is going to work just fine with Google Apps. I use Chrome for two reasons. The first is kind of self-explanatory because Google produces both Chrome and Google Apps. I can always be 100% sure that any new feature in Google Apps is going to work immediately with Chrome. Now, it'll also work right away with the other modern web browsers, but I do like just knowing that it's produced by the same company and the perhaps extra reliability I might get for that reason. The other reason that I'm using Chrome is that there are one or two situations where there'll be extra features that will be available to you. Usually these are little shortcuts and things that are available if you are using Chrome. If you're not using Chrome, it's certainly not a game changer. It's not going to be the end of the world. Use whatever web browser is available to you or that you're comfortable with. Okay, and the other thing that I'll point out as we begin here is that I'm using a Mac. Now I'm showing you my full screen because there are occasionally a pop-up menu will appear, and sometimes those can be outside of the browser window. I don't want you to miss out on those, so I'm showing you my full desktop. But you'll note that I'm using a Mac. I don't want that to throw anyone if you're using a Windows computer or you're using a Chromebook or a Chromebox. Um, any of the major operating systems will be just fine. So don't get hung up on the fact that I'm using a Mac and you can see the dock down here at the bottom of the screen. All right, so all of that out of the way, let's begin the training. Okay, I think that the best way to start training in Google Apps and in Gmail in particular is to start navigating the screen, just to kind of give you the layout, and then we'll kind of get into the main functions. We're going to spend the bulk of the time in our training session today talking about Gmail, and that's primarily because the other apps that we'd be covering today, Calendar, Contacts, and Hangouts, those are actually relatively small apps, and they're very straightforward. Once you get used to using Gmail, and especially as you get used to using the navigation and the layout of Gmail, you'll find that the other apps become very intuitive to use. So we'll spend the bulk of our time talking about Gmail, the rest of the time mostly on Calendar, and then we'll touch on Contacts and Hangouts. Okay, so up here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you will see the Google logo. Now, in your email account, one difference that you'll note will be that you'll have the North Andover logo up here in the top left-hand corner of the screen. I just point this out because it is a difference. It's sort of a minor difference, but it can be important, especially if you've got a personal Gmail account, as many of us do. You can always tell which account you're in at any particular time by looking in the upper left-hand corner, just looking for the logo, and then you'll know which account you're in. Now, sometimes you may have more than one account that you access in a particular organization. So for North Andover, you may have more than one account. This would maybe be if you were an administrator and you were accessing a separate account as well. We'll talk quickly about how to tell the difference between accounts within a domain. But for the most part, just know upper left-hand corner will tell you where you are. Okay, moving on from there, over to the right, you'll have the Google search bar. Now, this search is customized for Gmail. It uses much of the same technology that powers Google's sort of flagship search engine that we all know and love. But this is dedicated to Gmail. It's a very powerful search feature, and you'll note over here in the far right-hand corner of the search bar, there's a little down arrow, and this is one of my quick little tricks and tips for you. And that is whenever you see a down arrow inside of Google Apps, it always means that there's something cool there for you to check out. In this case, if I click on this down arrow, I'll see additional search options. And you can see that you can really refine and hone your search into very specific areas. For example, you can search for email from a particular person or to a particular person with a subject heading, including and excluding keywords. You can look for emails that have attachments. You can also exclude chats. And as we're going to talk about briefly in just a bit, chats are actually also stored within your email. So you can always find instant messaging as well by doing a search for your email. You can exclude chats by clicking here. You can also search for emails of a particular size or within a certain date range. Now, when you have put together a fantastic search, you want to create a filter with that, which would be basically automatic um, actions that are taken on incoming emails. Sometimes in Outlook, this is called a rule. In Gmail, it's referred to as a filter. If you want messages from a friend to be sent into a particular directory automatically when they arrive, you can perform the search and create a filter from that search. Of course, I haven't filled in anything here, so I'm getting an error message. Let's put in John, for example. John Lawler, one of my colleagues. I can create a filter for a mail from John Lawler and then perform particular actions on that. So I can have it sent to a particular directory. I can have it just skip the inbox altogether and archive that message. There are all sorts of things that I can do. And I just wanted to show you that you can get to that through the search menu. All right, so we'll move on from the search bar, and I'm going to just get rid of this search. We'll go back to our inbox again. Okay, so we're going to move along, and we'll stop here at the Google Apps grid. Now, this apps grid is represented as like a tic-tac-toe grid or 9 dots. This is the very best way, most reliable and fastest way of getting into the various Google apps that are available to you. So when I click on this, you will note that I have access to a number of apps that are part of the Google Apps suite. Gmail is one of those. Today we're going to also talk about Calendar. Here's Contacts, and actually Hangouts are located within the Gmail interface. They're actually located right down here in the far left-hand corner of the screen. So that's actually what we're going to be looking at when we're discussing Hangouts. All right, but the various apps that are located in here just scratch the surface. If I want to see more apps that are available, I can click on this More link at the bottom of the screen, and that will bring up additional apps that are produced by Google, as well as third-party apps that are available to you. The apps from Google can be either products that Google produces or companies that Google has acquired over the years, YouTube being one of those. So you can get into these apps quickly from this grid. Now I'm going to scroll up here. You'll see that this is actually all part of one common doc for apps. One thing that I'll point out while we're here is that every once in a while, you may come in to look at your doc of apps and notice that one of them is missing from the bottom row. Generally, this is almost always from the bottom row. And what's happened is that you have either accidentally or on purpose and then forgotten, dragged one of these icons down below into the lower part of the doc. You'll notice that I've just dragged it down and then I released my left mouse button, and it's now located here in the lower part of the doc. I bring this up because this is a very commonly asked question. People will notice that one of them is missing and they think they've thrown it away or they can't get back to it. You can always get to it by clicking more or by just simply scrolling down. You can grab that by simply left-clicking on it, holding your mouse button down, and dragging it back up. And releasing. The one thing that you can't do is throw one of these guys away. So for example, let's say I grab the calendar icon and I drag it out of the dock. You can drag it all the way over here to the far side of the screen and release it and watch what happens. It will fly whoop, right back into the dock again. So now it's back down here. You will also note something else, and that is that when you open up one of these apps by clicking on its icon, so we'll click on the icon for Calendar, it will launch Calendar in a brand new tab. Google Apps loves to open up additional tabs. And this is actually a good thing because you can always tell which program you're in by simply looking at the tab. But there is a bit of a drawback if you're someone like me who is more of a monotasker than a multitasker, and that is that it will open up a number of tabs. So for example, I'll open up some additional apps such as Contacts. And I'll click on the apps grid again, and I'll open up Google Docs. You'll notice that every time I do this, it's opening up a brand new tab at the top of the screen. And after a while, this also goes for additional documents that you're working on. These will open up additional apps, additional tabs. After a while, you can wind up with a number of additional tabs. And it can become a little bit confusing to where you are and what's going on. So there are a couple of best practices. The first is that you can close tabs when you're done working with them. And I think that's actually probably the best advice that I can give you. So I'll go ahead and close this guy out, and maybe I'll close the contacts one as well. But there's something else that you could do, especially if you're using Google Chrome. Although you can, I believe, also do this with Apple's Safari web browser, and that's pinning tabs. Now note that when I'm looking at a tab, I get a lot of information. The first thing that I get is the icon for the application that I'm in. This is a little calendar square with the number 1 in it. It's December 1st, believe it or not. And then you get a little extra information as well, such as the name of the account that you're in, the name of the app that you're in. There are a lot of items of information here, not all of which I need. Really, all I need is the icon letting me know which app this is. So what I can do is I can pin this tab. So think of like a cork board, and you're sticking a pin inside of this tab. To do that, all I do is I hover over the tab with my mouse, and I right-click on that tab. Okay, and when I do that, the right-click menu will appear, and the choice Pin tab can be found here. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and you'll notice that it gets very small so that it's only the icon for the app that you're in being shown. I can see additional information by simply hovering over with my mouse. You'll see that when I hover over, it will bring up the name of the, it will bring up the additional information that would be located in the tab itself. So I'll do that for Gmail as well. So I'm going to, again, right-click with my mouse, and I'll choose Pin tab. Now I can always get rid of that by simply doing the exact same thing and choosing Unpin. But in this case, I'm going to leave it pinned. So there are a couple of things that this does that are pretty cool. The first thing is, of course, it frees up a lot of real estate for additional tabs when you open them up. But the other thing that it does that's really cool is that when you close your web browser down, close your computer out for the day, when you come back in the next time and open up the web browser, it will automatically open and load these two tabs. And I know that these are two pretty handy tabs to access. My calendar and my email are usually the first two things that I check when I come into the office at the beginning of the day. And it's great to have these two tabs pinned here. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about here before I stop for some questions is the avatar for your account. Now you'll see that currently my avatar is this little pink circle with a person inside of it. I always call this like a Lego looking person. So this is my account avatar. Sometimes, it used to be in the past that it was your email address would appear. But in this case, you'll see your email address for the account that you're logged into appear when you hover over this icon. You can click on this icon to get more information. You can change or add a photo of yourself if you want to by clicking on this change button. You can get into additional information about your account, such as your account settings, by clicking My Account, and this will open up a brand new tab with links to make some adjustments to your privacy settings or your account security settings and that kind of thing. So you can get to all of that stuff from here. You can also sign out of your account, and you can add accounts. Now you'll see here as I'm scrolling down that I have a couple of other accounts that I have access to. Some of these, one is my personal account, and then I've got a work account listed here, then accounts for other clients that I work with. I actually have a number of accounts that I can access through this grid. But the first time you log in, you're only going to see your account listed. You can add additional accounts, as I have done here in the past, by clicking this Add Account button. And when I do, actually you'll see I have a pretty long list of accounts. You probably won't have any listed here, but you can always add a link to your personal account if you have your own Gmail account by clicking this Add Account button. You can log into your new account, and when you do, you'll have access to it from that drop-down menu. Okay, now I'm going to stop for just a minute to see if there have been any questions before we move on in our tour. Okay. All right, so feel free to pass any questions that you might have on. If you're in the room with Chris, you can ask him. And all right, great. So feel free to ask any questions. Also, let me unmute as well, since it might be easier to ask you as well. Chris, now I can hear the audio in the room that you're in. Do you guys have any questions, or are you okay?
Oh, we're good for now.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, I will mute you again. Okay. All right, so moving on from there, we're going to move down the right-hand side of the screen. And the first button we're going to get to here is the Settings button. And Settings is always indicated, marked by a gear icon. So when you're in any other Google app and you see this gear icon, it's for Settings. You can tell that, I'll go ahead and click on Settings, and you'll see that I get a few options right away. And the first option is I can change my display's density. Note right now that I've got plenty of space between the messages here in my inbox. There's plenty of padding between these cells. So it's pretty easy to read. But if I want to get more on my screen, I can click this compact link. And note that when I do that, it really shrinks the amount of space between my messages. I can get more on the screen. It's not as easy on my eyes though, so I'm going to switch it back to comfortable. You can also get to change your themes here as well by clicking Themes. I have a pretty boring display right now. It's pretty stark, but it's easy to train with. However, I just want to show you that if you had clicked Themes, you can choose one of these preset themes if you want to. You can go in and check the photos out that you've got available. But you can also just click one of these quick themes. And I'll click this jellyfish one because I like the way that looks. And once I do, you'll note they'll just take a minute here to load up. It's been a little slower than usual. Let's see, maybe if I click on one of these guys, it'll move just a bit faster. At any rate, okay, well, it's been a little bit slow right now. But what would happen is once one of these loads up, you'll note that the background will just change to whichever photo you've chosen. Ah, there we go. It doesn't change it all the way that Gmail functions, though. So all you're really doing is an aesthetic choice here, picking out something that is appealing to you, but it does not change the way that Gmail functions. So it's a pretty easy option to pick. I'm going to switch back though, for training purposes, just to our sort of stark background, this light background. Okay, and we'll go ahead and hit save, and that will close that up. All right, and then finally, when we're talking about settings, when clicking on the settings button, we will choose settings from within this menu. And this will get into our settings page that has many settings available to you and presented within tabs here. So the first is the general settings tab. And this is the one that we're going to spend probably the most time talking about today, although we will discuss labs briefly. I just want you to see the general settings and what's available to you here. You can make some pretty important functional changes. You can add a signature to your email from here. You can choose and type out your own signature and select it, and then that will appear at the bottom of any emails that you write. Just a quick time-saving tool that I think a lot of us are already using. And you can set your vacation autoresponder as well. If you're going to be away from the office for a little while, you want people to know about that when they write to you, you can set this up. so that you don't have to go to your IT department to have this set. This is something you can do for yourself. You can actually also set it so that it turns on and off automatically, which is great. Okay, and then my favorite of all of the settings, and that is the undo send. So you can check this box here, the undo send box, and then you can set a cancellation period of anywhere from 5 seconds to 30 seconds. I have mine set to the maximum amount of time. What this will do is it helps you to avoid that painfully frequent occurrence of sending a message out and remembering that you didn't attach a file to it. And then oh no, I've got to send that oops message with the attachment on it. If you have this set up, it will allow you to cancel this email out after you've hit the send button for up to 30 seconds after I do that, which is great. This also helps you to avoid that dreaded hitting reply all when you only meant to reply to one person, that kind of thing. You'll have 30 seconds to go in and cancel that if you've set your time limit at 30. So that's a pretty great feature. All right. Some of the things that you can do also help your transition become easier, especially if you're moving from a different email system, such as Outlook, for example. There are some labs that we can turn on under labs here that will make it seem a little more familiar, and we'll cover those as we get to the end of our Gmail training. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my inbox, and I can always get back to inbox by simply clicking on the word inbox over here on the left-hand side. Do that, and we're back into our inbox again. Now your messages are presented in chronological order. So with the ones that have come in most recently, all the way going back in time. However, you'll note that over here on the left-hand side, as you can see the senders, there are also messages that are presented in conversation view. Actually, Gmail refers to messages that have arrived in your inbox as being conversations. This is just sort of a term of art that they use. You'll note that a conversation view message is a message, basically it's a threaded discussion. So messages that deal with the same subject that have been sent back and forth on this subject will be grouped together. And you can tell that this is a conversation view email because it will have more than one sender listed. So here I've got 33 bowls is the name of one sender, and then Meg is the name of another. And then you'll see the number 2, and this indicates how many messages are contained in this conversation. If I open this message, you will see that I've got 2 messages listed here. The first one was sent on November 11th, and the second one, in reply to that, in response, was sent on the 25th of November. So this just kind of shows you that conversation view emails are listed here. You can always turn conversation view off if you find this isn't a way you want to work with your mail by going into settings again, choosing settings one more time, and then in the general settings tab, just a few choices down is conversation view. You can turn it on, leave it turned on, or you can turn it off. My suggestion would be to use it for a few days. Work with your email for a few days with conversation view turned on, and my bet is that you're going to find that you come to feel that this is the most natural way of working with email and is probably the most convenient way. At first, I was a little thrown by it because I thought I'm missing mail or something, but you're actually not missing mail. It seems to be a really efficient and elegant way of dealing with your email. Okay, so moving back to the inbox again, we're going to click on inbox one more time. I'm going to scroll down the list of email, and I'm going to get all the way to the very bottom, and I'll see this little innocuous looking link here called details. You can see me kind of moving my mouse back and forth over it. I point this out because I think this is one of the coolest features in Gmail. When you're using Gmail and you're using Google Apps in general, you are working in the cloud. So what this means is that you can access your email from anywhere you have an internet connection with a device that's capable of basically surfing the web. So a smartphone, your iPhone or Android device, or a tablet, or your notebook computer. It's incredibly convenient, but it does kind of open you up to a little bit of uncertainty. And that is, did I remember to sign out of that computer that I was logged in at the library. Holy cow, I checked my email, but I cannot remember whether or not I logged out of my account. Um, and that can be a little nerve wracking because you can check your email from any computer with an internet connection as long as it's not being blocked for some reason. So, what do you do? Well, you click on this details link. You log in, check your email, go to Gmail, click on this details link at the bottom of the screen, and it will open up this really cool window called activity information. Um, what you can find here are a couple of key bits of information. The first thing that you can look at is your recent activity. So where have you been signed in to this account in the past? You'll note that Onyx is located in Ohio, so most of my logins are going to be here in Ohio. But I was visiting my parents down in Florida not too long ago, and I checked this account. So you can see that I've got a login from Florida. This is great because it lets me feel confident about where I have logged in the past and feel pretty confident that other people haven't been accessing my email in any way. I can set up an alert preference here. And right now it's set to show an alert for unusual activity. When not someone else, I shouldn't say that. When I log in from a new machine that I have never logged in at before, a message will be sent to my Gmail account saying there's been a new login at a new Chromebook, or for some, I guess that would be something that would come up, or a new notebook computer or something like that. So that's a really good way of being able to check to see if there's been suspicious activity on your account. The other thing that's really cool that's accessible from here are the locations that you're currently signed in at. If I was checking my personal account or my work account, I check both of those regularly from my phone. So that's a current login at my account. Those would be listed here. Now, currently, I'm not signed in anywhere else under this test account. So if I was logged in, you would see a list of the places that I was currently logged in at. And by clicking this button here, sign out all other web sessions, I could sign out of those other accounts. So if I had forgotten to sign out of my friend's computer, I could go in here and click sign out all other web sessions, and then the only active session would be the one that you're currently in. And that's also should give you some peace of mind. I think it's a really great feature. I'll go ahead and close this window out. And again, to get to this, down at the very bottom of your inbox, just click the details link. Okay, moving on from there, we're going to go all the way across to the very bottom of the screen on this side. This shows you the amount of storage that you've used. Some accounts are unlimited. Other accounts, if they're a corporate account, would have 30 gigabytes. For example, this account. I can manage my storage by clicking here. This actually is sort of a shortcut to buying more storage if you wanted to, especially if this was your personal account. I believe personal Gmail accounts are 15 gigabytes at this point, which is plenty of space for what most people do. But if you need to get additional storage, you can always go to here. Now, in your work accounts, obviously you cannot sign in as an individual, and it's possible that your account may be unlimited as well, and in which case you wouldn't even see a limitation on this. Just note, this is where you can check to see how much space you've used, regardless of whether or not you've got a cap on that space. All right, moving on from there, you will see the Hangouts area. This is where your instant messaging happens. I'm going to actually expand this a bit by clicking and dragging. You can see these like three little dots here, the top of this area. All I did was click on that when my arrow turns into like a double-sided arrow with a line through it. I just know that I can drag this up or drag this down. Okay, so I'm going to drag it up a little bit just to show it to you. We're going to talk about Hangouts in just a bit. Actually, we'll talk about it right at the end of the session. Just want you to note that this is where it happens. I'm going to show you a lab that will allow this window to be presented over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And that makes it a little easier to see what's going on over here in the left side of the screen. But I'll show you that in just a bit. Okay, instant messaging happens here. Also, video conferences can happen from here. Phone calls can also happen from here. And plenty of things that can happen in this area. Hangouts is a very powerful tool and becoming more powerful on a continual basis. They're giving more and more features and thought to Hangouts and how it works. Currently, in a corporate account, you can have up to 15 people participating in a video call. So it's pretty cool. You can do a lot with this service. All right, now we're going to move. I'm going to shrink this down just a bit. We're going to start talking now about labels. Labels are basically, if you're used to using other email clients call these folders. So a label is basically exactly the same as a folder. It's a way of organizing your email. Now, I also like to call labels basically super-powered folders because it lets you do more than a regular folder lets you do. It lets you either store your email inside of a label as if it was a folder, but it will also allow you to stick a label onto one of your emails as if it was like a post-it note or a sticky note. Just a visual cue that this message here deals with Delta Ed. This message here deals with Springfield. I have either automated the assigning of a label to emails, or I have simply stuck the label on it. So the important thing to take away from here is that you can use labels one of two ways: as a folder or as a sticky note. Okay. I would suggest, though, that you not use it as both. That you should decide one or the other. And here's what I mean. We'll start by creating a label. To create a label, the fastest way of doing it is clicking on the More option. Well, I shouldn't say the fastest way, but the most traditional way of doing this is to click on More, then scrolling all the way down and choose Create New Label. It'll be the very last link. I'm going to create a new label, and we'll call this one Andover Training. Okay, now it's not a sub-label of another label. You can have sub-labels, but in this case, it's just a standalone label called Andover Training. I'll click Create, and then I'll scroll up here, and you'll see the first label I can get to, my first of my personal labels, I should say, is Andover Training. Now, I draw a distinction between a personal label, which is one you've created here, and a system label. System label are these directories: inbox, sent mail, drafts. These are pretty big ones. The biggest, the mother of all labels, is all mail. This is where all of your mail is located. This is also where archived mail, mail that is taken out of the inbox and archived, is also located here. But in a weird way, maybe the best way, I should say, of thinking about this is all mail is where all of your mail is located. All the rest of these labels, personal ones and system ones, are just various ways of viewing all mail through filtered lenses, basically. So when I look at my inbox, I'm only looking at a portion of my all mail folder, label, or directory, whatever you choose to call it. So the same thing goes when I'm looking at my Andover label, this Andover Training label that I created. I'm only looking at messages that deal with Andover Training. All right, so the other thing that I have not yet done here is you'll note that all of these labels have been assigned really nice colors. This one currently, Andover, does not have a color yet assigned to it. Now here's one of these down arrows again, where I'm hovering over Andover Training, and I see a down arrow again, designating really cool stuff located here. And the first thing I can do is I can add a color to this label. I'm going to choose one of these preset ones. I can always create my own colors if I like by clicking Add Custom Color, but in this case I'm just going to choose this neat green with white text. Okay, now you'll see that this has been assigned to Andover Training. Okay, I can use a label as if it was a sticky note by selecting one of these messages and then assigning the label to it. So let's go ahead and do that. I can always select a message by clicking on this square box next to it. So I'm going to click on this message from Meg, and I'll select it. And you'll note that currently, without selecting, I've got 3 buttons available to me here at the top. The first button allows me to select messages in bulk. If I click on this, you'll see I can choose all of them, none, read and unread, starred and unstarred messages. So these are ways of selecting a number of emails together. Next to this, we've got the refresh button. This forces a refresh of your inbox. So, think about all of the times in the past you've been impatiently waiting, breathless anticipation for an email to come from a friend. So you're waiting for it to arrive and it doesn't seem to be coming. You can click the refresh button to force a refresh to get the very latest messages. Then you have the option to click on the More button. And currently, the only option available to you is to mark all messages as being read. We won't do that. The reason why I'm pointing out these 3 buttons is you'll notice when I choose this select box and click on it for Meg, suddenly I have more buttons that appear. The first thing that I can do is I can archive this message, and that will remove it from my inbox. And basically it's located in the all mail label. Then I could report the message as being spam. That would send it to the spam label down here, spam system label, which is right here at the very bottom. I can send the message to the trash by deleting it, and that would send it over into the trash label right here. Please note that when I report a message as spam or I send it to the trash, those messages will stay in these 2 labels until 30 days has expired. So you have basically 30 days to change your mind before that message will be automatically and permanently deleted. So just wanted to point that out for these 2 guys. And then I have the label buttons. That kind of brings us back here. The first is that I can use a label as if it was a folder by clicking Move To. Now, keep your eye on this message and you'll see what happens. When I click on Move To, I'll choose Andover Training from the list that appears, and the message goes away. Okay, now it's been moved over to your Andover Training label. And you'll see that it's now bold because it has an unread message in it. So the other way you can use a label instead of a storage mechanism is you can use it like it was a sticky note. So in this case, I'm going to select this message from Meg Rivers. I check on the box and I go up to the labels button. Now I'll click on labels and I'll choose Andover Training. And now you'll see that that label appears on Andover Training on this message. So here's why I encourage you to use one technique, the sticky note, or another technique, treating it as a folder, but not both, because it can be a little confusing. So if I click on Andover Training, there's one message in my inbox with Andover Training. There's another message inside the Andover Training label. When I click on this, these 2 messages now appear. So it can be a little confusing. I just suggest you use one way or the other. Or you could, in the alternative, abandon the use of labels altogether. And this seemed like sacrilege when I first started teaching how to use Gmail. But when I first got my work account, I was labeling every single message that came in, and just thinking I was being extremely efficient. And, I was being pretty efficient, but I had a colleague ask me one time why I was doing this. And I said, well, because, I want to make sure that I'm using labels, constantly. And he said, I never use them. I was like, what? So no, I never use them. I rely on the powerful search feature of Google and Gmail to find messages for me. And that way I can be sure that I'm never missing a message. And I'm like, well, that's great. Because not only does this search feature allow you to do searches for emails from a person or to a person, it will also do keyword searches that work with the full text of your email. So it's remarkably fast, but let's say I am planning a trip to Disney. So I do a search for Disney. Okay, nothing has been returned yet. I didn't even have to hit enter. I know that I don't have any mail dealing with Disney because I have no responses at this point yet. What I do get is an option to do a full web search of the term Disney, but because I don't have any email that has the term Disney in it, if I click enter here, I have a return that says no messages match your search. Now, instead of that, let's say I want to do a search for Meg, my colleague Meg. First, I get some suggestions about addresses. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. I'll just click on this one. And you'll see a number of messages come up that have either been sent by Meg or she was one of the recipients to this message. So a ton of stuff appears. Now you'll note, actually, as I scroll down the list of mail that's coming into the inbox, that there are a few messages here that have this little icon of a little bubble with a quotation mark in it. These are instant messages. These are Hangout messages that have been sent in. Just to show you that these are also come up in the search results that you get. All right. Then one last thing I will show you before we move on from labels is that I'm going to remove my selections from here. Oh, I guess I just selected all. I'll select none. Okay, and now everything's unselected. There's a faster way of doing this. Instead of clicking the message, clicking the button, choosing the label, I can simply click, and while holding my mouse button down, just drag this label out onto this message and release it. And now it's been applied. Likewise, I can grab this message, and while holding it, my mouse button down, I can drag this conversation or message, I should say, over to this mailbox and release it. It will now move that message. So just clicking and dragging is how I did that, and it's much faster. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about composing a message, but before I do that, let me stop and see if there have been any questions. Okay, nope, it doesn't look like it. All right, we'll continue on. Okay, composing a message. Now, this is sort of the meat and potatoes of using email. If you're going to start a new message, you can click the compose button. Oh, it looks like we may have gotten a question that's just come in. Maybe not. Oh, well, maybe. Let me just unmute Chris for a minute here. Chris, do you have any questions?
We're still good.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, I'll view that as being a good sign. Okay, so composing a message. When you start a new message, you can click the compose button. When you do, it will open up the new message window in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Now, this isn't a ton of space to work in. And I was, for a while, a little confounded as to why it was presented in such a small space, because you can't click and drag this around. I'm trying to drag it, can't. Can't really make it any larger through any obvious way. What you can do, though, is you can go into two other things that you can do here. The first is you can go into full screen mode by clicking this double-sided arrow. And this will open it up in a larger window in the center of your screen. But again, you still can't click and drag. So you can't refer to stuff that's being referenced behind this message. You can't move it around. So I'm going to go ahead and move it back to the way that it was before. This time, instead of simply clicking this double-sided arrow, I'm going to do what it recommends here in the text box that appears. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard And while I do that, I'm going to click the double-sided arrow. So I was holding down the Shift key on my keyboard, and I just clicked that double-sided arrow, and now it has launched it in its own browser window. So I can move it all over the place if I want to. I can click and drag this out to being a larger window if I like. I can also make it a much smaller window if I like. So there's a lot that I can do with this, and that's a really handy function. Okay, so we're going to start by typing a message to a colleague, let's say my colleague Solange. So as I start typing a name out, I will get suggestions listed here. Now these are people that are these are people who will be in your contacts directory or in your corporate or citywide directory. Okay, in this case, as I'm starting to type a name, and type the letter S, and I'm getting suggestions based on those lists from that begin or end or have the letter S in them. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to continue typing and I'll get Solange Jacob. Okay, so I'll click on her name. Now I can add a few other names if I like. I can add my colleague John. And I'll add my colleague Meg. Okay, so now I have these three folks listed here. Now I can add CCs, carbon copy, and I can also add BCCs by simply clicking on the links for them. And then I can start typing an additional name in here. The other thing that I can do, which is a really convenient feature, is I can click on one of these names, and while I'm holding my mouse button down, I can drag them down to different fields. This is also a very handy time saver. All right, and then I'll type out, perhaps the subject will be greetings, and then I'll start typing the body of my message, but I'll make some terrible spelling errors, like I hope you are having a great day. Okay. So any words that I misspell are going to be underlined in red. Now the quick way of doing a spell check or running spell check is going down to the lower corner of your composition window, clicking on more options and choosing check spelling. And when I do that, any misspelled words or potentially misspelled words will be highlighted in yellow. If I want to correct the spelling, all I have to do is click on one of these words. I don't have to like select the whole word or anything. Just click on the word, left click, then I can choose one of the suggested spellings, or I could choose ignore. So in this case, I'll choose hello. But here's another quick feature or a way that you can do this. I'm going to go ahead and close my spell check down by clicking this little X. And this time, I'm going to right-click on the word. So I'll just put my mouse on top of this word and I'll choose right-click. Now I have a couple of options here. Let's see, why did this not come up? Right-click. Okay, yeah, I must have just been moving my mouse around a little bit here. So when I right-click on the word, I get a suggested spelling at the top here. I could click on this and it would change the word, but let's say this was a proper noun, like somebody's last name, and I didn't want it to continue to come up. I can add this to dictionary. This is a feature only found currently in Chrome, using the Chrome web browser. You can add this word to Chrome's dictionary, and then the next time you go in to do a spell check, it will not bring that word up as being misspelled. All right, so that's a handy feature there. Okay, so some other things that you can do. You can change your font by clicking on this formatting options button here. When I click on that, I can choose the font that I want from a limited selection of fonts that are easily recognized by other email clients. So Outlook and other clients, Thunderbird, for example. These are very common to those. Then I can choose a size from these four sizes that are commonly understood. And then I can choose some other options as well, like bold, italicize, underline, text color, alignment, bulleted lists, and then indents. And also I can format this as being quoted text. but I'm going to go ahead and move away from those and talk quickly about attaching files. Now you can attach a file, but right away it's important to note that when I attach a file, I am limited to 25 megabytes worth of files, either as one large file or as a number of smaller files that add up to 25 megabytes. This is not a lot of space though. So Gmail provides another way of doing this, and this is you can attach files using Google Drive. We're going to have a training session on Google Drive tomorrow, but today I just want you to note that you can click on this. It will look in your cloud drive, your Google Drive, for files, or for folders for that matter. I can choose one of these guys, and then I can choose whether to attach it as a drive link or as an attachment. A drive link just basically builds a link and puts a text link in this email that someone who receives the message can click on, and it will bring them into this file. This is great for very large files. So if you've got a video, for example, or an audio file, large file that will be too big for that 25 megabyte limit, you could have a 20 gigabyte file if you want to. It may take a little while for them to download, but you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. This is just a quick way of adding a file as an attachment or as a link to your Google Drive. I can add a photo. I can add a link, a text link if I want to, hyperlink. I can also insert an emoticon. Note down here at the very bottom, it says saved. While you are working on an email, the whole while you're working on an email or in a file created in the rest of Google Apps, it is constantly backing up your file to the cloud. So it's backing this email up. Let's say my computer were to burst into flames as I was writing this email. So I hit it with the fire extinguisher, my computer is ruined, and I think that the super long email that I wrote is lost forever. Well, it's not. It's being constantly backed up in the drafts label. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to click on drafts. Now, when I click on drafts, let's say I'm at my friend's computer now, and I click on drafts after I've logged into my account. The message that I was just working on is going to be the first one listed. I click on that and I can go right back to where I left off. So you don't have to worry about losing any data. This is always being backed up. And you can check your Gmail from anywhere you want, and you can get to these drafts just as easy as can be. So I'll go ahead and close this guy out. Save and close. Okay. So I'm going to go back into my inbox again. We've talked about composing a message. We have talked about labels and how they work. Let's move over to talking about settings again. I'm going to click on settings, the settings button one more time, and I'll choose settings again. And let's discuss just a couple of really great labs that can customize Gmail to make it work maybe the way that you'd like it to. I'll click on the labs tab here at the top. When I do, we'll talk about just a couple of these guys. The two that I really like to bring up are preview pane, which is right here. I'll enable that one. And then I'll keep scrolling down here and I'll choose Right Side Chat by Emily C. I'll enable that one too. Okay, now I've enabled these two labs. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and I'll click on Save Changes. I just want to point out the fact that while you're working on an email, as I said, it's constantly backing up that email in the background, so you don't have to worry about saving. The thing that you do need to worry about saving are changes that you make to settings that will affect your account. So in this case, you've affirmatively chosen two different labs, and labs, just as an aside, are features that Gmail basically says are beta. So it says that they may change, break, or disappear at any time. My experience is that if these are already so popular that it's generally highly unlikely that they're going to go away. What does happen is, as in the case of that undo send feature, um, they will be promoted into being a general setting, but they generally are not demoted from labs and go away. All right, so I have enabled those two. I'm going to click Save Changes. When I do that, you'll see my inbox is going to reload with Preview Pane active and with my chats, my Hangouts over here on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, so what does Preview Pane do? Well, first, the Preview Pane button is located here. I can toggle it on and off. So if I click on this, that split pane mode will go away. I'll click on it again, though, to bring it back. What this does is a very common feature, like in Outlook, for example. I can click on a message, and then I'll see the body of that message displayed while I can still see my inbox, and I can continue to scroll through my inbox. I can change the orientation of this. It's using, for example, horizontal split. Sorry, choosing vertical split. I will remember that one of these days. So I can choose the orientation, select a message here, and you will see that you can move around pretty easily. Okay. And then, of course, you now have your Hangouts over here, so it's not really covering up and obscuring your labels that you've got. All right. Now, this does look pretty crowded. I am working with a very small laptop right now. It's a 13-inch screen, so my real estate is pretty limited. On a larger monitor, this will look just fine. So I just point this out because they're two handy features. Okay, we're going to move away from Gmail and we're going to look at Calendar next. So I could open up Calendar by going to my Apps grid, clicking on it, and then choosing Calendar. But remember that we've already pinned the Calendar tab up here at the top, so I'll click on this guy. And now we're in our Google Calendar. Now this is a test account, so it's pretty sparsely populated. But you can see a few things that are very common to most calendars. The first is, you know what? The first thing I should point out, though, is that it has this same navigation bar up here at the top. The search is a little bit different. If I click on this down arrow, you'll see that there aren't as many fields as there were in Gmail, but the fields that they have are important to Calendar. You can still search for events. So I'll close this guy, clicking the X. The first thing that you will see is that you can change your view of this calendar from week, which it's currently selected as. I can choose day, month, 4 days, and then I can have a list of upcoming events in an agenda view, so just as a text-based list. I'm going to switch it back to week, and we'll continue on here. Now in More, I can do two things. I can print the screen, or I can force a refresh to get the latest and greatest events coming up. All right, and then finally, I can choose settings. Now you'll note when I do this that there aren't as many settings available. When I click on settings from within the settings button, you'll see that there are only 4 tabs. And that's because it's just not as complicated as Gmail is. It doesn't really need to offer you as many features. There are some cool features that are listed here. For example, I can choose events from Gmail if I want to. I can also add weather. I believe that's down here. Yep, I can add weather in my calendar. I can choose my location and that kind of thing. So there's a lot that I can do. It's set up here. The most important of these, though, is the Calendars tab. And that's because this is where your calendar sharing settings are listed and accessible. So if you wanted to delegate control of your calendar to somebody else, for example, you can do that from here. And you'll see that currently the calendar we're looking at is the top calendar listed here, and that's the David Gensen calendar. We'll scroll over here, all the way over to the far right side of the screen. Under sharing, I can edit my sharing settings. Now there are 2 ways that you can edit your settings. There's the global way to make your calendar public or share my calendar with everyone in my organization. I can change the level of viewing that they can get at here. So currently it has see only, free, busy listed, but I'm hiding the details of my event. So the title of a meeting, for example, and that kind of thing. Or I can choose to show all event details if I want, so that other people can look at my calendar in my organization and they can tell that I'm meeting with, these folks at this particular time and we're meeting about a particular subject, for example. But then I can go from the global down to the more granular level of settings. I can add a person and just type in their email address, and then I can change their permission settings. So currently, I have 4 choices. I could choose to show my event details or show only free and busy and hide the details of my events to this particular person. But then I can delegate my calendar. I can allow somebody to make changes to events. And I can also allow somebody to, almost like a subcontract authority for my calendar by allowing them to make changes and manage sharing. So if, let's say I am going on an expedition to the Arctic and my friend George is going to make changes to my calendar for me, but I'll also allow George to manage the sharing, just on the off chance that George is then, sent on an expedition to the Amazon, where he's not going to have access to Gmail. So he can, before he leaves, manage my sharing by giving somebody else the ability to share my calendar. So this is pretty broad permission. However, there are times when it might, be worth doing and setting up this way. Now, at any time, I can always remove a person by clicking this little trash can icon, or I can change their settings on the fly. Okay, so those are things that you can do from here. Now I'm going to go back into my calendar again by clicking back to calendar, and we're going to create a new event. But you know what? Before we do create a new event, I want to just talk quickly about what's going on here on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, the first thing that you can see is that you have a quick calendar view. And I can get into any particular day by clicking on that particular date. I can go back to today's calendar by clicking on today. Now, note though that when I do that, it has flipped me out of week view and into day view. So I'm going to click on week again. Okay. My calendars are calendars that I created and I control. Other calendars are calendars that other people have given me access to, or I have access to simply because they're a part of my organization. I can always type in somebody's name if I don't have access to their calendar. And by typing in their name or their email address and hitting enter, it will send an invitation, or a request, I should say, to them that they'll receive in their email asking for permission to view their calendar. You can turn calendars on and off by clicking on the name of the person. So you'll note that as I type these or click on these, events are going away. Oh, yes, they're going away too. Okay, I can turn them back on by clicking on them again. Okay, and then they'll appear here on my calendar view. All right, so I'm going to create a new event. To do that, I just click the Create button, and I'll type the name of an event. We'll call this North Andover. I can choose a date by clicking on the date range or time range. I can choose to have this be an all-day event by clicking the all-day box. And I can also set up reoccurring events by clicking the repeat button. And this will let me set up reoccurring events. Go ahead and hit cancel. All right. But instead of doing those, instead of setting a particular time or a date, instead I'm going to use one of the cool features of Google Calendar, and that is the ability to check other people's calendars and schedule events in 2 very easy ways. So first I'm going to type in some people that I'm going to invite to my meeting. I'll type in Olia. I'll type in, let's see, I'll type in Meg. Okay. So I've typed these two people in. These are people I'm going to invite to my meeting. There are two ways that I can find a time for this. The first is I can go over here. I'm currently on the Event Details tab, but I can click Find a Time. And when I do, it'll bring up a visual representation of their calendars to show blocks of time when they're going to be free, when we'll all be free. So 11 a.m. looks like a good time for us to meet, obviously. So I can set it up that way. But the other way that I can do this is I can go to back to my Event Details tab. I can click on this Suggested Times link. What this will do is it'll bring up a quick scrolling list of times when we can all get together to meet. So if I select, let's see here, choose this time on Wednesday when we can all be together. When I do, it will change the time and the date and time in these boxes up here at the top. All right. Now I can go in, and if these have been populated, I can choose rooms to meet. And I'll choose, let's see, we're located here in Lakewood, Ohio, so I'll add the Lakewood Barn. When I do that, it will show up here in the list, that will populate this field. I'm going to remove this video conferencing link. When you log into your account to set up a meeting, you may or may not have items listed here. These are resources that can be added by city administration. These don't necessarily need to be meeting rooms, by the way. These could be other resources such as a cart of laptop computers or a truck or anything that can be checked out or assigned to someone. So if somebody were to go in and try and schedule this room after I have already chosen it, it will not even show up as being an option for them. So feel comfortable with that. Okay. Now, if I want to add a video conference, a placeholder for that, I can choose Add Video Call. This will set up a placeholder for a Hangouts video call. And I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. But going down from here, beneath this, I can choose which calendar I want to assign this event to. Now, currently, I only have access to my calendar, David Ganson, so that's the only choice available to me. I can add a description, I can attach files, I can set a color for this event, different notification intervals. So there are a lot of things that I can do from here. Down at the very bottom of the screen over here, underneath the guest list and the rooms, etc. list here, I can give my guests certain abilities. They can modify the event, they can invite others, and they can see the guest list. If I want to remove someone, I can simply click the X over here next to their name. When I save this event, it will send invitations out to the people that I've asked to join. They'll receive these invitations in their Gmail, and they can RSVP directly from the email itself, which makes it really easy for them to join in on a meeting. So I'm not going to send an email out to these folks because I don't want to confuse them when they get a message from a training account here, but I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Do I want to send invitations? In this case, I'm not going to. So I'll hit don't send. Okay, so this North Andover meeting has now been created. When I go in to view this event, I'll just click on the event and you'll see the details of this event. Now I can join this meeting, and what this is going to do is it's going to open up Hangouts. I'll click on this guy, and here I am. Hello. So it says that I'm the first person here. Do I want to join this meeting? So I'll hit join. Now, nobody else here is going to join this meeting currently, but I just wanted to demonstrate a few features when you're inside of a video conference. The first couple is that you can add additional people by clicking this invite people link here at the top. I can mute my microphone. I can also turn the camera off, and when I check that. I don't believe that I've got a photo set up for this account, so it'll just be my little Lego person icon appearing. And I can reactivate that. There are some things that I can do to improve the picture quality if my bandwidth is a bit low. I can go in here, but generally speaking, it seems to work really well, even with not the world's greatest network connections. Over here on the side, I can open up a chat feature, and I can also share my screen if I like. And this is great for demonstrating, referring to a chart or something like that. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and hang up. So I'll leave this call. All right, and I'll leave the Hangouts window. Okay, that basically covers Calendar. Let me stop for a moment before we go on to talking about contacts, see if there have been any questions. Okay. Chris, any questions so far? Or you guys doing okay?
We're still good.
Okay, excellent. All right. Okay, so we're going to move into contacts now. I'll get to that through my apps grid as I typically do, and click on contacts icon. So that will open up. And all right, so now I've got a few things that I want to point out to you. The first is that you can create a new contact, add a new person by clicking new contact. You can add their name, you can add a photo of them, add notes, their email address, all sorts of stuff as you're typing these things in. Maybe Ron Smith. As you're working on these, they're being saved in the background, and it creates a calendar entry. Not a calendar, a contacts entry. And it adds them to the My Contacts list. So My Contacts are reachable by clicking on My Contacts. That brings up all of the contacts that you have added. Now, these could be people that are in your corporate directory that you have moved over to make it easier for you to find them, or it could be just brand new folks. Okay, beneath My Contacts are contact groups that you've created. And you can create a new group by clicking on New Group. You can enter a name, so I'll call this North Andover. I'll hit OK. All right, now the North Andover group has been created, and I can click on it. But what I can also do is I can click on My Contacts, go back into this list. I can choose a few people from the list, just as examples. I can add them to the North Andover group by clicking on the Groups button, which is 3 Lego people all standing together, or maybe a 3-headed, I don't know, creature. I'll click on Groups, and I'll choose North Andover. And now you'll see North Andover has 3 people assigned to it. I can see who those 3 people are by simply clicking on North Andover. I'll get these 3 folks. Now, the cool thing about this is that the cool thing about creating a contacts group is that you can go back into your Gmail, and instead of typing these three addresses, I can simply type in North Andover, the name North Andover, in my To field inside my composition window, and it will auto-complete these 3 addresses. I can have 30 addresses in here if I want to. The cool thing about this is that I don't have to type everybody's address all over again, and it also prevents me from forgetting to include somebody on a message. So that's pretty cool too. All right, then going down from there, most contacted are the people that Google has determined you have contacted most often. Other contacts are people you have contacted less often. And then directory will be your citywide directory. These are all the people that this list is maintained by the administration. Now, you can always move people from here. You won't be actually moving them out of this list, but you can take people's addresses from here and add them to My Contacts, and that will increase the number of your contacts by 2 people. Okay, so that is basically contacts and how it works. So it's pretty straightforward. Last but not least, we're going to go back into Hangouts. And to do that, we're going to go into Gmail. Click on Gmail. Okay, now I'm going to turn off this preview pane to free up a little bit of real estate over here. All right, so again, your Hangouts are listed here, and these are your instant messages. There's this little down arrow right here next to my name. I can do a few things from here. By clicking on this, it opens up sort of a menu. I can change my status. I could say in meetings, do not disturb, for example. I can choose a few other options that designate my visibility. So for example, I can show when I was last seen online. I can show which device I'm using. I can show when I'm in a video or phone call on my devices. These are just convenience features for other people, so they can know, well, he's in a call right now, so I'm not going to call him. I can set up notification mutings. I can convert text to emoji. And I can also go in and look at my archived Hangouts. Now, archived Hangouts are, I'll actually explain what these are by bringing up an example. I'm going to click on Meg Trainer here. When I click on Meg Trainer, I clicked on her name, it opens up our chat window. Now, if you've been chatting with somebody for a while, you'll note that you will need to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll to get all the way back in time to see what we've talked about in the past. Now, of course, I can do a search inside of Gmail and bring up search results for particular terms that are in my instant messages. But this is a little bit burdensome, especially if you're trying to find like a link that you typed or something like that. And scrolling a long time is also pretty tricky. You can archive a Hangout, though, which basically starts a brand new Hangout and moves all of the rest of your past conversation into an archived Hangout. So that the next time you chat with somebody, you'll be starting fresh. And that's a really cool feature. I try to do that usually once a week with my texts, especially for people that I'm chatting with quite a bit. And to do that, I go up here and click on the gear icon, and I choose Archive. I click on the Archive button. It will begin a brand new Hangout fresh with this person, so that we can start a new thread, basically, and it's not so burdensome to look through. All right. I can delete this chat. I can also block this person from here. Let's say this is somebody who's abusive in writing you, and you want to block them. So you can do that from here as well. Usually, the default at organizations, cities, and things like that are to have everybody who is in the directory be able to chat with one another without accepting an invitation. If this is somebody outside of your organization, though, that texts you, they'll have to send you an invitation to chat first. If they try and chat with you, it will just bring up a message saying you don't have permission to chat with them, but you can send an invitation and then like a request, and they can accept that, and then you can begin a chat. So, but you can block people here. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. At any time while you're chatting with someone, you can start a video call with them by clicking this video call button. You can add people to your chat, transforming it from being a one-on-one chat into a group chat by clicking this little add a person button. You can also mute notifications on a particular chat. So I can turn them off here so that if I'm in the middle of doing training for someone, I'm not getting pinged by this person all the time. So that's another thing that you can do from here. All right, let me go ahead and close this. And again, just to remind you of this, you can click this little down arrow and go into archived Hangouts. You can also go into the people you've blocked and unblocked them if you want. Okay. And finally, talking about Hangouts, you can start a brand new chat by clicking this little magnifying glass here to find people to chat with. And you can type in the name of somebody here. If you have permission to chat with them already, then they'll come up in the list. If not, it will say you'll need to send them an invitation. All right. And the phone call feature is also really cool. it allows you to make free telephone calls throughout the United States and Canada. This has been really convenient for me because my wife travels for work quite a bit to Canada, and I don't have to um, generate roaming charges and things, and she doesn't actually when she's out of town. So we can talk to each other this way. It's pretty cool. All right, so that concludes the hour and a half of my training session. I am going to turn this over to Chris, and let me do that here by unmuting Chris. Okay, Chris, and let's see. I am going
Well,
to.
I was going to say that was a great training. I think actually I might just wrap it up and just do kind of a more informal thing here, so you're not
All right,
hanging on.
right on. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. I
That was a
appreciate it. It was
great
a lot of
training.
fun to do the training, and I can't wait to meet with you guys tomorrow.
Awesome.
All right, great. Well, have a nice evening.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.